The interior design in this house, it's not my preferred style. It is my style. It's my vocabulary, my shapes, and also that's informed by the bones that Ken gave me. It's a reaction to the shapes that he laid down. Over the years, it's still changing and growing. It is almost like a living object. My name's John Buckern. I'm the interior designer and fabricator on the Kellogg Doolittle project. It was built for Bev and Jay Doolittle, and the architect is Kendrick Baines Kellogg. I would describe Ken Kellogg as really underestimated genius. Construction started in '89. I came to the house in 1994. I've been at the house so many years and for such a long period of time, I feel like the house is a part of me. Like it's my identity. Jay Doolittle would always tell me, I don't care how long it takes or how much it costs. I just want you to do your best work. The new owner, Scott Leonard, and I are continuing with basically the same relationship where you don't get carte blanche, but it's the best next thing to it. The terrain this house is situated on is 10.5 acres, and it butts up to the Joshua Tree National Forest. I'm sure when Ken saw the starkness and the beauty when he came out here, it inspired him to do these shapes. The original owner of the house, Jay, was fascinated by fossils. Every other week when I arrived, he would have another book on fossils for me. So I tried to incorporate a lot of vertebrae type motifs. The whole time I was building it, I had a pair of headphones on and I was listening to Miles and Monk and Coltrane. I just liked the repetition in jazz, but the whole thing forms another bigger picture. So it's what I try to do with my shapes. The building on this side is 14 columns, and on that side is 12 columns. And you can see that they don't touch. There's close to 1,000 panes of glass up there. Another challenging thing on this project is everything is coming up a golf cart path. Every piece of glass that you see in the house, some of them are 10 foot, 12 foot high and 5 feet wide and weigh 600 pounds. Just getting things physically moved around here is really difficult. Bev Doolittle was a painter, and she used these two tables here to do her artwork on, and now they're used for dining tables and entertainment. Originally, they weren't supposed to touch the ground at any point, but when the structure was done, and if you took your finger and just touched it, it would just vibrate. So I ended up putting these parts that come up to hold the glass. I lived in Carrara, Italy, where this marble's from, and I had a thin piece of it leaned up against a window, and I saw the light passing through it, and it reminded me of alabaster, which they used to make lampshades out of. And the shape is inspired by the early Sputnik satellites that the Russians put into orbit. If you see these things in the dark building, looks like they're floating like stars in the sky. Because I was working on this house well into the evening, I knew how dark it was. When it came time to make the structure here, I decided to turn it into a lighting fixture that could light up the whole house. It was kind of inspired by a skeleton that's been bleached out of the sea urchin. It's got that kind of shape, and it's got the little ridges on it. I always thought those were kind of pretty. This is one of 9 exterior doors. Each door has to hit one column, but it has to go to the other. So in order for the door to function, I needed at least one straight edge. Then all the handles, each one is individually made. Each door has its own motif for the edged glass. The frosted glass reads as kind of a mint green to me, and there's a lot of plants out in the desert that have that same silvery green tone. This stone structure you see was a planter. It had cactus and plants in it, and Scott said he didn't need another planter, but he would love a bar. Once again, we have the kind of spinal column thing with the ribs coming off. There's 360 of these ribs, and they articulate to form kind of another shape. So if you've ever had a drink standing around a planter, it's just not as great. Bab Doolittle had an Apple computer, and it was clear plastic, greenish. I made the desk to match the computer. Originally, all the light switch plates in the whole house were made for this old school analog type light switch. When Scott moved in, he wanted to update the lighting system. This is one of the only remaining one, and we're hoping in the future when we have a little bit more time to make new switch covers. The Doolittles were kind of introverted people, so they never thought that they would need more than 4 chairs at their dining table. It's cantilevered fully on a steel tube. It passes through the column and continues out to the exterior dining table. I like the orange color of the Rosa Verona because in a lot of the concrete, there are similar colored stones related to the tone of this. This is the living room. It has a fireplace. When Ken and I were designing it, he did this concrete shell, and I did this portion. I was kind of thinking one of those sea creatures, I think it's called a nautilus. When I was designing this, I bent the stairs up to continue under this concrete shell, and I think it works pretty well. Jay, the original owner, he used to like to go hiking in the canyons down in South Palm Springs, and he really likes the river rocks. We use these in the bathroom, and this is just a continuation. The entrance to this room is kind of a homage to Frank Lloyd Wright, who used to like to compress you into a tiny space, and then when you get through, it gets voluminous. Scott was wanting another bedroom, so we decided to build this bed. It's the biggest thing I've ever built as far as a piece of furniture. Originally, Scott was thinking that it would be more of a gathering place than a bedroom, like a bunch of friends could get on here. He likes it so much now that it's used as his primary bedroom. This is the primary bathroom. This is a bronze his and her sink. I really let it go on this one. I didn't hold back. I couldn't tell you what the design for this is inspired by. It was more of just a process of drawing and drawing and drawing until I came up with a shape I liked. In order to get this up here, it weighs so much. We made a wheel out of a round circle out of plywood, put the sink in it, and rolled it from the driveway all the way up here. This is a primary bedroom. If you see here, this is the lighting fixture that you saw before. That's where we are. We're on top of that. The bed is situated to look out the clear story, and it's really beautiful at night to see all the stars. The Doolittles were really into books, so they wanted as many books as possible to fit in here. The wood sat for 6 years in the garage on stickers to dry out. And then I put it together. When these were made, these reveal sort of the thickness of a dime. And you can see that even though these have 11 coats of automotive finish on them, what was the thickness of a dime is now almost 3/8 of an inch. You can see how much wood shrinks in the desert. Nowadays, you can't buy this automotive finish. This is highly toxic stuff from the 80s. This room is a guest bedroom. It kind of feels to me like a little cathedral in here. Has a different feel from the rest of the house. If you have the choice between cantilevering and not cantilevering, I always choose to cantilever. So this desk is cantilevered. The bed here has shelves. The marble was in the form of a huge block about the size of a small car, and every piece of marble in here came out of the same rock. We still haven't completed the house, so this is one of those details. I just jimmy rigged something, and these still have to be fabricated. This is the guest bathroom, and it's one of my favorite rooms in the house. I don't know what I was thinking, but I just went crazy with the marble. And I fabricated these sinks and cabinets. I just love the shapes and the volumes. When I was in college, there was a furniture maker there is really famous named Jack Hopkins, and he taught me to make furniture by stacking wood. And then I took his technique and transferred it to marble. The columns all go down into the ground approximately 14 feet. The placement of the house was totally up to Ken. It just goes to show you his genius, though, that it's one thing to be looking at a topographical map, but it blows your mind to try to think about how you could place a building in a mass of boulders. It's almost beyond imagination how his mind works. One of the main premises is that the interior and exterior become one as much as possible. The house floor begins at the street and flows through the whole house. The material for it came from a rock slide. It's an exact match in material and color for the boulders that are in the house. The boulders just flow right through the floor out into the landscape. I think this house will be around forever because of the choice of materials. It's basically stone that's been ground up and put back together. I'm a little bothered sometimes by the label of organic architecture. One influence that I never talked about through my whole career was abstract expressionist painting. And you have like Jackson Pollock and you have Mark Rothko, and they're just completely different. To me, I would just say this is like Ken's thing. Like, Ken's an artist. I don't know if trying to put a label on it really helps to describe what it is. The house, it has a certain austerity to it, but on the same token, I think because of the choice of materials, it feels really warm inside the house to me, but it still has a little bit of edge to it, which I really like. When you have people in this space, it is great. It is really wonderful. Even though it was never made for entertaining, it's the perfect spot to entertain. My work on the house has taught me everything about designing and fabricating. Especially in recent years, it's taught me to be more social, enjoy showing it to people, and so I feel really good about that. This house comes as close as anything could be to the feeling you get from like looking at a Mark Rothko painting or listening to John Coltrane. I hope it gets that feeling.
The way it achieves the floating house effect is really through engineering and structure. What I find most exciting about architecture is that it combines the technology of it, which is the engineering side, in the structural engineering, and then you have the artistic side. And at the same time, it's a place that you live in. My name is Chan Lee Lin. I'm an architect. This is a weekend house, and Denise and I worked on this house together.
We worked on the house together, but we did kind of take on our professional roles in the development of this house, which meant that I had total veto power.
Yes, I draw, she bosses around architects. Yes. I think it's a natural thing for most architects. I think we do most of our work for other people with other people's money. I think we all want to do it once, at least to do a house or something for ourselves.
It was Memorial Day weekend in 2009. We were in Katona, New York. We had located that area because of all the lakes, because of the commuting distance. We walked into a real estate, one of like 5 on the main street there, and said, you know, we're looking for land. And they kind of looked at us like we were crazy. Within a week, it was clear that we weren't going to find land that, 1, we could afford to build on, or 2, was actually viable and buildable in that community. The broker said, well, maybe you want to consider a distressed property. Yeah. I think that's how he phrased it.
So we saw some burnt down house, flooded house, houses with lots of problems, but you could take on if you are willing. And we found this property that was basically had not been lived in for about 15 years. It had holes in the roof and animals living in it. And for us, it was perfect.
Welcome to our home. This is the north side of the house. This is our main entry. We are standing in front of the volume of our stair, which connects the first and second floor. You will notice the first floor is much smaller than the second floor, which cantilevers out both east and west. As we walk to the entry, you'll see that we kept the higher quality wood down below, so you could really see up close the grain of the wood as you're entering the house.
Doors are very simple commercial grade storefront doors, but we added this leather wrapping to the handle so that in the winter it feels not so cold, but it has a very nice warm tactile quality to it.
He made this out of his belt.
Hey.
This is our entrance. As you come in, you can see straight through to the backyard here. You can actually see straight through the bedroom. The bedroom intentionally is 1 foot lower than the main entry level, partially to kind of root into the ground and partially to allow for the upper deck to be lower than the living room so that when you look out sitting in the living room, you're not obstructed by railings. We'll go into the other bedroom. It's really no different than the other bedroom next door, except for the view. Here's really where we wanted to nestle this bedroom down into this rock and fern garden outside, which is lovely, and we had nothing to do with the design. We really set the house within the existing context. This was here, and we fell in love with that landscape. So this is the stair hall. This is the second wall that has literally 2 columns anchoring down, I don't know how many feet down, 10 feet, 20 feet, yeah, down into bedrock. And then if you come up the stairs, part of the design of the house was wanting to kind of always connect you back to nature and to keep you oriented as to where you were. And you know, one reason for this window looking down into the carport is keeping you connected to nature and to the site, which is really what we fell in love with the house. This is our second floor, and if you come off the stair and turn to the right, which is turning to the east, you will come into our dining room.
Beyond here is all cantilevered. We are basically above the carport and looking over the backyard.
And if you come here and you're at the windows, you know, we have morning coffee here next to the windows, the sun's coming in. You really do feel like you're floating here. From here, we'll walk west to the main living area. This is our main living space. We designed this very much to be casual, comfortable, entertain friends. You know, everybody's always in the kitchen when you're entertaining, so this was designed in a way that we could still be part of the party when we're in the kitchen.
This is the main living space of the house on the second floor, and as you can see, it's a very casual, open, social space for entertaining and relaxing.
Yeah, we have definitely more furniture than than needed than the space deserves.
When we went to visit one of the Neutra houses in LA, what he did was to use a lot of mirrors to expand the space, and that's one place we got an idea to place mirrors in strategic places so that the ceiling above us, feels like it extends. Of course, you see the ceiling there, but there's no slope ceiling beyond this wall. But the mirror helps you visually trick your eye and make the rooms appear much larger than this. Half the time during the summer and the warmer months, it's great to be able to come in and out through these doors and entertain or just relax inside and outside. You can see how being elevated one floor here is really a big plus here. You're in a zone of the trees and surrounded by nature.
So if we come this way, we'll go into the primary bedroom, which is really where we spend all of our time. You've just crossed through the threshold to being on the cantilever on the west side. You will see the western view. It feels like you're floating again.
Floor-to-ceiling windows, wall-to-wall, and at the end of the cantilevers, that really accentuates the fact that you are above the ground floor by one floor.
You can look back to the studio, which is the addition we built, the studio garage. The studio seems to be a one-story structure there. Because of the terrain, the garage is below grade and built into the hillside. All four of these pieces are from my uncle, who made furniture, was very handy, was a great artist, and used automotive paint actually to make these paintings. So, which is good because we get some intense sun on the western side, and the artwork doesn't suffer for it.
We studied multiple schemes before we landed on the house that you just saw. This was one of the first ones. We were trying to save the original 1,100 square foot house that was here on the site. But we went away from the idea of saving that original house because no matter what you do to it, it will be very much limited by the small structural grid that it had. And then we said, okay, we're not going to save the house. We had this idea that, well, if you really like the second floor, why don't we put everything on the second floor? So what we have here is a scheme that has the same living room that you saw, and the kitchen and the master bedroom, but two other bedrooms and a study that is all elevated on the eastern end of the property.
With the Board of Health, if we wanted to avoid a full-blown public hearing, we could only relocate one bedroom.
One of the bedrooms.
Upstairs, as opposed to all three. So
yeah, so in this case, all the bedrooms that used to be on the ground floor, like in this one, has to go upstairs, and so that we saw that as another challenge. So this is pretty much what we built, with two bedrooms down below and one bedroom on one end, dining room that you saw, and a living room and a kitchen under the tall volume. This model was built for me by an artist, Takeshi Miyakawa, who is a very good friend of ours, and he brought it for me on my 50th birthday. What's
not here and what wasn't here with the original house is, again, the garage studio that sits here. You can see the terrain. This really afforded us the opportunity to kind of tuck the garage into the earth and build the studio where we're sitting on the first floor. So it really does align with this first floor of the house. And for the regulatory reasons, we had to connect the two structures with a covered walkway, which I think is a very nice architectural touch. It's almost Japanese in some ways. What makes the floating aspect possible is a steel structure and a very significant foundation that pins the steel structure into the ground so that the house is stable during the wind. And what you don't see, which we were very, very careful to do, was to design a steel structure in a way such that the steel members are very, very small and basically disappears into what looks like a conventional 2x6 walls. If you look at the structural drawing of it, this house is basically two parallel trusses that are supported by very small foundations with two ends cantilevering from the foundation about 20 feet on each end. Good engineering makes things look easy, and that's what we're trying to achieve with the design of the house.
Now, the biggest windows are here. This is 33 feet long, and it is a source of the most natural light. It's facing directly south. During the winter, the sun comes all the way back into the back wall of the living room and heats up the house. In the summer, as you can see, no sun comes in. So that's one main room, and then bedroom faces west and the dining room faces east. Each have a completely different view on the sunlight conditions. We chose a dark shade of color for the top, and it's black. The idea was to make it look like it blends into the shadow of the trees that we have here, so that it doesn't really stand out. It's not a huge house, but you can see we have probably 18 chairs here, and we can comfortably, okay, it's too many.
Too many chairs.
We can comfortably entertain 20, 30 people easily, and in a way that connects the outdoors in the terraces to this big room very seamlessly. So I think for me that's one of the best part of the house. You're comfortable if you're alone, or you're comfortable with many of your friends, or you're comfortable with a bunch of furniture that you collected over the years.
Yes. We actually have really appreciated, especially living in New York City much of the time, just the wildlife we have here: birds, fox, deer. Supposedly we have bear. We haven't seen those, but
Lucky.
I think this house surprises people because from the outside, it looks very modern. Whether it's off-putting or intimidating to people who have an impression about what a modern house is, I think once they come inside, there's a level of warmth and comfort. And I think that's from the materials and the use of, and the structuring of the light, and certainly the surrounding trees and the woods coming in.
It's a dream house. I have many more.
Yes. It's a great house.
It's a great house.
We see the flaws and what we could do better, because that's who we are, and we're critics of every structure we ever see. But
we've done very well with this house.
Yeah, we're very happy
definitely one of the dream houses.
Yeah, I would say that. More to come.
I wanted to make sure that the materials, the palette, the character of the house was responsive to the site. It's not often that you're building on top of a 40-foot tall stone wall. Hi, I'm Stephen Harris. I am the architect of the Bedford Quarry House. It is within an hour of New York, but it feels like you could be in Montana. This was a functioning quarry, feldspar, rose quartz, things of that sort. The reason the quarry was abandoned was because they hit water. Many architects prefer working on nice, flat, buildable sites. I'm much more interested in difficult sites. I looked at it as this extraordinary geological opportunity, and the fact that it had so much water in it, and the vegetation and the trees were so beautiful. When the owners found the site, there was a house on it. It was a very different house, and to be charitable, it had had a bit of deferred maintenance. We started over. We worked very hard to figure out how the owner actually lives. It's a young family, and you're figuring out the site, where the light is, where the wind is, how things operate over the course of the day. Almost 50 years ago, the man in the class ahead of mine at Princeton had written a thesis called Psychoanalysis and the Place of Arrival. Was that the process of moving from one condition to another, one can parse and divide into stages, what he referred to as a liminal condition. That was one of the ambitions for this house, taking From the approach, you see a glimpse of where you're going to go and a piece of the house, a kind of tease, if you will. Then you lose sight of it. The road bends around, it comes up, it rises, you come back around to the back side of the house, and you're in a courtyard. Then there is a stair that takes you down to the main level. Then as you come out onto the terrace, as you approach that edge, you can see the water. It is the space between things. As you approach the house, the one opening in these two walls is where they intersect. That brick wall, conceptually and literally, slides through the building. If you look carefully, you'll see the garage. That's the top of the garage door. It's a single pane garage door based on an airplane hangar. As you can see on both sides, it's glass all the way through here. This is conceptually a void. The stair needed to be figurative. It needed to be something which did not conform to either geometry. As you come down, you begin for the first time to see the other side of the quarry. Terraces out here, all of that. So you have a sense that this is where the main public floor is. In here then is the room where I think they spend the vast majority of their time. Like many younger families, it's got a great kitchen, it's got a dining area, and it has a sitting area. One of two ways in which one talks about building on a sloping site. The two ways you do it are the cave and the promontory. So as we move from one condition to the other, this end of the room is actually cozy, intimate, and then as you move farther in, it begins to reveal itself. You see that promontory up there, you see the little pathway that goes down to the dock, and this is the corner that is cantilevered over the edge. So finally, at this point, you've got the waterfall, you've got the quarry, you've got that incredibly beautiful sheer face, almost like the Palisades on the other side. So in some ways, it's a calibrated sequence of reveal and of arrival. I think it's very important that architecture induce movement. When every single room has the same view, there's really no reason to move. The interiors are relatively muted, and there's subtle little tropes. Like if you look at the lines in those rocks, and you look at the little lines in this rug, there's this kind of reference that occurs there. Obviously, this stone and that wall bear some formal relationship. There's also a little tiny balcony up here off of this side. So if you have some friend who smokes cigars, you know, it's a place where you can stash him. Another thing that we've increasingly done is when you have an open kitchen where everyone is hanging out, I think it's important to have a back kitchen, a part of the kitchen that is out of sight. So looking over that way, you'll see that there is a second sink, a lot of storage. There are dishwashers back there, so you could have a nice meal, all of that, and then put all the aftermath over there and deal with it tomorrow. This can be divided off. You can close off this room more for acoustical reasons than for privacy. This is then the media room, AKA the polka dot room. It also happens to have a model of the house. We are right about here now. So you can see from this that the house is actually two boxes. It's this box, which was the garage that had the garage door that shut. This is the slot that goes through that we came in on. This is then the two-story piece. You can see the topography here and how dramatic this thing drops away. Goes back to Livy. if you read Livy about where the bedrooms go and where the public rooms go at a palazzo. There's a whole passage about how the ground floor is about fortification. The main floor, the piano nobile, where all the public rooms are, the bedrooms are above that. I think subliminally, it has to do with protection. This is in the primary bedroom, which has a not bad view. The waterfall, the quarry, the far side. One of the things we sometimes don't take enough thought to is the kind of rituals of getting up in the morning, getting dressed, going to bed at night, packing a suitcase, all of that. A place to toss your clothes in the evening or to lay out what you're going to wear. This is the primary bathroom, which has two little chapels off of it, one of which is the loo, the other of which is the shower. I hate brushing my teeth and looking at myself in the mirror. And I'd much rather stand here and look at that waterfall as I brush my teeth than stare at myself. Two closets. I bet you that one's his. This is above the fireplace that's in the living room, coming directly up. This is also a sedum roof. It's just coming back from the winter. I think there's something magical about the sound of that waterfall. It eliminates every piece of stray sound you can hear. This is the one place where you could look down into that little courtyard. That's the beginning of a trail that goes around all of the water, comes back the other side, has steps down to the water, the dock, the boat, all of that. As you may know, a lot of ponds have little fountains in them and things like that. That's to aerate the water and to prevent algae growth and things of that sort. In this case, we figured out another way of doing it, or David Kelly did, which was to just pump a little piece of the water up to the top and let it come and fall down as a waterfall. It has the other great advantage of giving a kind of tranquility throughout here. We worked from the beginning on this project with David Kelly, who is a landscape architect and a partner in Reese Robertson Partners. And working closely with him, there was an idea about vegetation that might initially appear wild. It is something whose color and its texture, it could have been dug out of the quarry and ground into gravel. So it has that kind of local character to it. This is the continuation of that brick wall that was outside. We chose a brick that was slightly irregular. It's not perfectly flat, and it gives a texture to this wall. There's a skylight that runs the entire length of this brick wall. The children's rooms have window seats. These trees are set here to give a little bit of privacy to these rooms. That's Reese Roberts. They designed these rooms, the furniture, the cool light fixtures. When you're here, there's a sense of stability. You don't feel like you're on top of a mountain or something. There are other things that are about the same height that you are. By stepping this terrace out to follow the profile of the quarry, we were able to lounge here and look at all of that. The dining area over here is probably the one that's the most exposed. I mean, it's the only place that's farther out than that. But, you know, from here, you can actually see the water, the dock, everything. I also think it's nice to look at the house from here. So it's a nice view of the house, I think. A little biased, probably. What we were trying to do was eliminate the boundary between the inside and the outside. We didn't need the window to provide a foreground. We worked very hard for the spaces outside of that, the landscape, to provide that foreground. The idea is that perhaps there are no walls. Perhaps you're outside all the time. One of the things about our choice to locate the pool over there is because We're trying to distribute the amenities and destinations throughout the site. So this is a very different idea about landscape. It may have something to do with a rock in a pool outside of Rio by Niemeyer. When you're looking at all of those things, the quarry, the promontory, all of that, it's difficult to appreciate how beautiful just being in a woodland is and how magical that is. If there were two adjectives for a project that are my greatest ambition, it's for a project to appear effortless and inevitable. If someone comes over to the house, I would prefer that they not be wowed. I would prefer that they not know who the architect is. I would hope that there would be a kind of ease, serenity, comfort. I would love it if they began to notice and realize there's a lot more there than what they can see. I'm sure you've seen films or read books and you want to see it again, or you want to read it again, or you want to hear it again. You know there's more there, you've just seen parts of it.
The boulder is always present. You see it through triple glass that is curved. You see it through a round window in the kitchen. You are aware of the boulder even in the spaces that don't have direct views because the walls are either radial or curved around the center of the rock. Welcome to the Rockin' House in the Catskill Mountains in upstate New York. I designed this and built this with the help of local craftspeople, and it is also my family's home. When we found the property, this boulder was magically resting on the highest spot of the land. And we felt this was an invitation to design a house right around it. That's where everything started. We had a compass built, and we circled, made the first courtyard with a plumb, a level, and a very long stick. This house is entirely sustainable. It's built out of sustainably harvested wood from forests that are certified. This is a conical roof clad in solar panels, and it also produces more energy than it will ever consume in the lifespan of about 100 to 300 years. It harvests all the solar energy that we need to run the house, and it collects also rainwater for a swimming pond. Let me show you inside. So here we're in the mudroom, which has 7'4" high ceilings, and then it slowly gets narrower, and then it gets wider and wider, all the way to the main space, which has in the tip there a 22-foot ceiling. The sunken living room was one of these pandemic additions. Out of curiosity, I took a pickaxe one night and to check how deep the bedrock is, and found out that it was about 4 feet. This sunken living room has many ways of inhabiting it. Here I'm sitting probably the most upright, and then we have these tetrahedron pillows that can serve as headrests. There is also the chance that you can go all the way down and lay flat onto the bedrock, and it's a whole different experience, and actually very cold right now, very comfortable. The rock is in the center, but in a way, the geometric center of the house, that would be pretty much here. I think this is very important in this house, that we wanted to not only make it look in a certain way, but also function in a perfect way. Many moments, many days, many dinner parties start on this kitchen island. It really is the heart of the house. This curved kitchen is built by Jan Kremen, a carpenter from the Czech Republic. The transition to then a dining or a more formal sit-down is very fluid. It's in the same space. The space gets a little taller, and here we have this rectangular table. A custom-made fireplace that I designed to come straight out of the ceiling. This triple glass is the maximum size that would fit in an ocean container. It came from Germany, and it had like an inch on the bottom and on the top of the shipping container. The rock also has very different personalities. When you see it from down here, it almost feels like in a neck, or the kids call it E.T. because E.T.'s head looks very much like that. In a winter storm, it feels you're inside a snow globe, but also it has a little bit of an aquarium feeling. You can experience it very differently from one day to another, from one moment, from 1 hour to the next. I hope the boulder likes the attention. Yeah, I think he was a little lonely for 12,000 years till we found him, or he found us. So it's a glacial erratic that was dropped here about 12,000 years ago in the last ice age. The way these rocks fell is really how we found it. We like living with him, and I think his trees are growing well, his moss is growing, so I think he's a happy boulder. This is my home office, where I often sit and sketch. It also has the model of the house that we built. Shows you all the rooms, how they relate radial to the rock. So with each door to one of the spaces, Lorenzo's bedroom, laundry room, powder room, guest apartment, Kiki's bedroom, each door makes the main space 3 feet wider. And all the windows that look relatively wild have again something to do with the rock. We have 64 segments that built this house, 64 pizza slices as we called them. The house is the Passstück between you and nature, where you really set the windows exactly where they help you to inhabit the interior in the most comfortable or most exciting way. When I sit here on my desk, I wanted to have the view through the window on my eye level. Same in my bedroom, we wanted the window very low to the ground in order to be able to sit on, but also to look outside. This led to a relatively wild layout from the outside that only makes sense once you inhabit the building inside. All of our projects, in one way or another, start in a sketchbook, models and sketchbooks. We're trying not to waste anything, so even the kitchen window here, which is a round window in the concrete wall, became the fire pit of the fireplace. This is my daughter's room. She has the view from her bed out to the east side, sunrise. She wanted a big desk, which can change as she expands her crafty projects. My client, in this case my daughter, was very happy with this design. Kiki shares the bathroom with her brother, Lorenzo. They also, at some point, they were like desiring an outdoor shower. And so I came up with the idea of getting a shower that is draining directly into the concrete slab. And it has a big window where they can open the window and they can shower pretty much with nature outside. This is my son, Lorenzo's room. He is the lucky one who got a window that is large enough that it becomes a door, so he can eventually escape and has his own little private garden out here. I wanted to have our bedrooms all facing east, so both kids have east exposure and our bedroom. And the guest apartment is more north-west facing. The bathroom is again a relatively compressed space compared to the very tall bedroom, but then it has a nice little surprise that you can look down into the main space. You smell the coffee in the morning already. You can always call down and be connected to the main action in the house. We wanted the guests also feel independent from us. So it's actually a guest apartment. And then we have a built-in couch. All these beams were prefabricated and engineered to actually build in a sofa that takes advantage of the structure itself. And it is high enough to be comfortable on the dining table. This is our Polaris stair that also has a handrail that points, double functioning as a naked eye observatory where you see Polaris at night. This explains the idea of the stair. This is the axis of the Earth. So it's a 42-degree steep stair with a handrail that double functions as a naked eye observatory of the North Star. This is the guest's bedroom with a king-size bed and north exposure and a skylight to the south. Here you can stargaze on this Charlotte Perriand and Le Corbusier chaise longue. And you can also open it up and look out into the sky. The roof is cone-shaped. We placed the roof in a way that the largest surface is exposed around 4 o'clock, the time when the grid is most used. So these shingles by Sun Style are 3-foot squares. They're all overlapping, so it forms this kind of dragon scale, holds the water out, and each one of them produces about 80 watts. Altogether, we produce 18,000 per year. The house uses about 8,000 kilowatt hours. So we have 10,000 extra for an electric car, and the rest we donate to the grid. Because we wanted cross ventilation to have as much natural air as possible, each facade has windows in it. So to contrast the curtain wall on the south side and part of the east, we continue with a very traditional barn material, board and batten facade. You can see already how the color is shifting. It's local pine that turns like a silverish gray. In my studio, we try to live by this mantra that everything that we design connects individuals to each other, to themselves, and then to the cosmos. The cosmos can be nature directly around you, but it can also be the sun and various other star constellations and the ocean, if there is an ocean, or in our case here, the rock, which is also all stardust in the end. Cosmic architecture goes back to thousands of years of architecture, where old temples, even very simple monuments, were aligned with usually the sun as the strongest force. After studying and traveling to many temples and monuments, I realized that it was time to incorporate this also into more regular architecture. So why could it not be in a private house? That's the challenge, and that's what sets some of this cosmic architecture apart from non-cosmic architecture, that you do have this goal to ultimately connect to something larger than what is directly around you. If a building can make you aware of this, I think it's amazing. I certainly am obsessed with geometry. We started stacking out the 50 by 50 square, and the first move was that we actually offset it by golden ratios. It's the proportion that appears in nature in many plants, but also in the human body. As an architect, you're always looking forward. You're not just designing for who you are now, but you're designing for who you want to become. We built this house with the goal that it will hold a lifetime, maybe the lifetime of my kids, and hopefully even till the next ice age. This is the latest addition by my son, who turned 12, and he built this tree house with his friends. I helped them building the zip line and tested it also for its safety. It should be fine. Ready? That's my house.
The inspiration for this house came from many different elements. A design is an emotional or spiritual element, which is the way one perceives space and feels about different things. Emotionally, I wanted a structure that felt that it was soaring out into space, almost defying gravity in a sense, but at the same time tied back to the land itself so that it feels that it's a part of the land and it belongs in this one particular site. My name's Robert O'Shatz. I am the architect, builder, and homeowner of the Elk Rock residence. I designed the house in the beginning of 1988. When I started the project and bought the land, it had this wonderful view of Mount Hood and the Willamette River. It was a difficult, very steep site. At the time that I bought the property, it was classified as unbuildable land. As an architect, I know what you can do and what you can't do. Every site is buildable if you look at it in a creative way and look at it in terms of what is the poetry of this site, what is it trying to say to you, and how can I bring that poetic feeling out in the structure. I acted as my own builder on it, and what I did was I hired a young man who never built a house before, but he was a handyman and he knew a little bit about concrete work, a little bit of framing, a little bit of everything. One of the really wonderful things about him is that he had experience, working with kids that were in drug rehab programs or high school dropouts. So we brought these kids on and gave them the tools and directed them on how to build the house. The construction of the house was far simpler than what it appears to be when you see it. When you see the house, it's like a teeter-totter where it cantilevers out as it soars out into space, but there's a counterweight that goes down to the ground that's a big concrete slab that's keeping the house from tipping over. So in a sense, the house was built upside down where this smallest spaces are down below, and as you go up and get a better view as you go up, the house gets bigger and bigger. So it actually created kind of a funnel shape, and some people refer to the house as the funnel house. It's a 3-story house, but every story is a split level, so it has 6 different levels to it. And I was able to get my driveway brought up into a carport that was at the kind of halfway point of the house, so that you're never going up 3 flights of stairs and then back down. You walk in from the carport to the entry, and you just go up a half a flight and you're at the family living area. Or from the entryway, if you went down a half a flight, you'd be at the children's bedroom level. Once you get to the community living, dining, family area, there's another half flight you can go up to, and that takes you to the primary bedroom area. And that level, you have a sitting room first where you can watch TV, or there's a desk behind some sliding doors that can open up. Behind that then becomes your sleeping area, your dressing room, and your main bathroom facility. All these different levels have their own balconies and exterior connections to the outside. And I also have my own architectural studio in the house, which is the lowest level of the house because that's the smallest space in terms of area. But that has a separate entry so that I can say I actually have to walk to work every day. I wanted to make sure in this house that the living area had a spectacular view, and although you would get the view from other places within the house, you'd get it in a different way. So I put the main sleeping area back further away from the main view where you could get it, or when I'm laying on the day bed, I can actually have an opening where I can look out and also see Mount Hood at the same time. There's a great deal of wood on the interior that when I was building this house was predominantly, local within Oregon. The stone comes locally here in Oregon also. Also, some of the use of material is determined by effects that you're trying to create. So for example, I wanted a main living space that had just wonderful acoustics so I can sit in the room in the evening and just listen to music and relax. So to do that, I designed the structure where the main living area didn't have any parallel walls to it. The walls are at slight angles from one another. The floor and the ceiling are not parallel. And then I set my speakers in a cabinet and shut them up towards the ceiling so that the sound would hit this wood ceiling and then spread out over into the space. I wanted to use natural materials as much as possible and then introduce some color to the house, because you don't want to create a monotone feeling throughout a structure. You want to have a play of materials, colors, and textures. You want a structure to feel warmth to it. So this house is mainly just natural materials and their natural colors, but I did introduce a teal color to pick up the sky, pick up the water below, and then down below on the outside, there's some green areas that pick up just the landscape. But the choice of colors was mainly to create a structure that felt that it was at peace within the environment that it was in. When I'm designing a house, I'm designing all the furniture within the house as I'm doing the preliminary drawings. So as I was designing this main living space, I had this couch already in mind, and I had the dining room table in mind, and a lot of the other furniture in the house is built in. Beds are built in, desks are built in, kitchen table is built in. One of the reasons I do the build-ins is because I'm thinking of all these elements as I'm designing the structure. I'm thinking of, the kitchen and a place for a person to sit so that someone can be cooking and a few other people can be in the kitchen and sitting and talking and everyone can be together. So as you're thinking about these things, all of a sudden they become part of the design, they become part of the lines of the house. The poetic sense in this house was this dynamic hillside going up, and there was these beautiful trees. The site had a sense of softness to it, and I wanted to bring out that softness in the structure. I wanted a structure that just gracefully soared out into space. Because one of the beautiful things about living in this house is that you're so high off the ground that you're able to watch the birds by looking down on them and see how they soar and how they float in space. And I wanted that same feeling to be in the structure, but I wanted psychologically for people to feel comfortable, so I wanted to tie it back to the ground at the same time. The important thing in architecture, in my mind, is to design a structure that's at peace with its environment and people feel at peace within the structure itself. After I completed the house, I realized that I've always dreamt since childhood of living on water or by water, and I realized that this might be the closest I ever get to water, so I decided to stay in the house and live in it, and I've been in it now for about 33 years. Every project starts with a particular site and a particular program and needs that you're trying to solve. So architecture is really solving the problems on the way a person wants to use a structure and not starting with a preconceived idea, but solving the problems from the inside, working your way out.
Welcome. My name's Zen Gessner. I'm the son of Harry Gessner, who's the architect of the Sandcastle, 33604 Pacific Coast Highway, Malibu, California. The Sandcastle is a one-of-a-kind structure. My father built it with reclaimed materials. The property has 6 bedrooms. There's 3 in the main Sandcastle and 3 in 3 separate apartments surrounding the property. 122 feet of beach frontage on a very secluded North Malibu Cove. It was the late 60s, and my father proposed to my mother right up there on the bluff and pointed down to this empty lot and said, "Nan, if you marry me, I'll build you your dream house down there." He wanted to build a house that was the ultimate family beach house, something that promoted creative thought. He had a unique way of starting a project, and that was usually to go and camp out on the job site before anything was ever built there to assess how nature interacted with it. I was about 1, and we were sitting out on the beach, and in my father's book, he has a picture of us building a sandcastle, and on the back of that photograph, he wrote, "Let's build a sandcastle for Mommy." So now we're in the Sandcastle. I had told you before that my father built this house for my mother. She was a Broadway actress, and so he designed this fireplace like a Greek theater show. The hearth is the stage, and the sunken living room is the theater house. 99% of this house is built from reclaimed materials. My father believed that older materials had a life to them, a soul. So the floor is maple It's from a school that was burning down. The fire chief called my father and said, "Harry, you better come down here. Maybe there's some good planks in there." My father went down, shaved off a little bit of the char, and saw there was beautiful maple underneath. So he grabbed as much of it as he could and put it into the floor of the house. The walls of this house, this is old growth redwood from aqueduct pipe that was in Northern California. The brick in the fireplace is from a building that was being demolished downtown LA. These support poles are old telephone poles, and they have a beautiful design pattern to them. Those stained glass windows that are over here in the greenhouse, my father got a call from a fire chief, once again, who said, "Harry, they're tearing down this beautiful church in Pasadena. They're taking all of this beautiful stained glass away. Do you want any?" With a living room that's built like this, you really appreciate so much of the exterior. Having floor-to-ceiling windows fringe the entire front end of this. One very cool fact is that he built this fireplace and then angled every single one of these windows to reflect the firelight at night. He wanted to build a house that communicated and communed with nature. And that's what you feel in this living room space. This house has no foundations. It was built on a dinner plate of concrete that is on sand, which is non-compressible. Whenever there's been an earthquake, we hardly feel it at all. It just rides it out like almost a boat on the ocean. Even over 50 years, it hasn't tilted at all. This is the dining area on the corner of the living room. When I was younger, this is how my father would call me in from surfing. The meal would be cooked in the kitchen and the table would be set here, and he'd go out right to this door. He'd open it up. And believe it or not, you can hear that all the way out in the water. This was also where we would have our Thanksgivings, our Christmas dinners, family get-togethers. It was always a lot of fun at night. We'd have music and a fire going in the living room and some amazing food. Just great. My father in the 60s, late 60s, was commissioned to do an interior decorating design of a kitchen in the Los Angeles Convention Center. They were taking it apart and they said to my father, "Well, we're just going to be throwing this stuff away. Do you want it?" And my dad said, "Absolutely." So this round chopping block, the countertops, the round bar, this whole design that you see here came from an installation that was at the LA Convention Center, and my father just made it work seamlessly in this house. I love these little touches, the hot plates, beautiful old tile that are scattered around the center table here, and you have all your cooking knives are all right here at hand. We also have a beautiful fireplace over here that was always lit at night. And this is really where the community came and hung out. For a while we had Rod Stewart next door who would come over here and suddenly the door would open and hey, here comes Rod. It was just the community center. Everybody felt comfortable coming and hanging out here. This is my first bedroom, a lower floor of the sandcastle. This was the original room I kind of grew up in until the age of 7, and you can see a little indication of it over there by the door. My father converted this into an office for his later years. So this could be an office, it could be converted back to a bedroom, but I think a really special point of this is the greenhouse. You really feel a connection to nature and having this kind of indoor-outdoor feeling. It's very peaceful. Especially in the afternoon when the afternoon sun hits those stained glass windows and just projects all the light and color into the room. It's just gorgeous. Tons of circles. There's circles everywhere, the whole room. The sunken area over here with the primary bed right there. You look up and you have these vaulted ceilings with this beautiful, beautiful circle design. At the top of the staircase, you have this yellow stained glass window that is almost like you're looking through a magical lens. In the primary, you have this great little fireplace, but on the other side of it, you have a daybed that looks out over the entire ocean. It's where my mother used to read her scripts. It's where I used to just hang out and read books or draw. There's a story about this. which leads up to my father's design studio. My father used to get up there, up a ladder, and scurry up the ladder through a small hole at the top. One day he was up there designing, and he looked out at the ocean, and he saw a tree floating by. So he jumped on the ladder, came down, grabbed a surfboard, paddled out, and dragged it in to shore. Got me and a bunch of my surf buddies to help him drag it up, tie it to a Monterey pine that's just outside, and we started sourcing out individual pieces of driftwood to make the steps. We put this whole thing together out there, including laminating this handrail all around the tree. And then we took it all apart and brought the whole thing in through this 2-foot window down here and rebuilt the whole thing inside. And this is now the way up to the design studio. The design studio above is a magical space. I think it would make an amazing painting studio. It's like all of the energy of the house is all centered around this tower. And like a lighthouse, that's where the light comes from. This was one of the places that I spent most of my youth. This backyard patio area with all this reclaimed brick on the ground. We would have amazing parties here. This whole space would just be alive with people and seafood that we had caught out in the kelp bed. This outdoor area here, it really kind of lended itself to being a community center. The shape of the house was very welcoming to people. I think the fact that it was round, unconventional, so creative, it was exciting for people to visit. The kelp forests that are just off the beach are some of the most beautiful in the state of California, full of life. Growing up surfing out here was always an adventure. Sometimes you want to step inside and take a break from the sun. We've got a cabana over here. It started out as a garage for our cars, then turned into a games room, then into my father's archives. And now it is a very comfortable cabana. So you surf, you come in for lunch, you have a seat, read a book, and go back out and surf again. It's a good lifestyle. And now I'm gonna take you up above the cabana to the nest. Welcome to the nest. We have a little kitchenette over on this side. This is set up as a recording studio right now because one of my sons is a musician and he's doing a lot of creative work out here. But this is where I spent my youth and my teens. It echoes the same round structure as the main sandcastle. Growing up out here was a bit like Swiss Family Robinson. The fact that my father really built this with his hands and the property evolved every year. There was always something new, something exciting. The stained glass window here, the panels on this door over here, they came from another house that was being demolished. And of course you have this amazing view. When I woke up in the morning as a kid, I had that in front of me, and there's the entire ocean. So we're standing in the treehouse apartment, which is on the front end of a 3-car garage. You have 1 bedroom here, you have a bathroom, shower. It has a great kitchen area, a great dining area with these floor-to-ceiling windows that look out over the sandcastle and out to the ocean. And one of the most amazing views of the whole property. It's really special up here. When we built the treehouse, we put wooden bowls on this tree, and the birds loved it. So this really did become a treehouse, birds included. We are in the boathouse. This is a separate apartment, and we are currently standing in the living room area. This is a great, great guest apartment. There's plenty of room for a family to stay here. You have a very comfortable sitting area. You've got a kitchen, you've got a bedroom, and a bathroom with a shower, all filled with beautiful little touches. There was a battleship that was decommissioned, and they were tearing it apart and taking all the steel and everything and repurposing that into other boats and ships, except for the portholes that they were just going to throw away. And my father thought that was ridiculous. So he found a way to incorporate it. This mural that's behind it, a family member of ours, she stayed out here for about 2 weeks. We had no idea what she was doing, and basically she left. And when we came up to see the place, it was all painted and she did this beautiful undersea mural. My father felt that to live in a structure that challenged your mind, nothing would ever get boring. There'd always be something new to see, somewhere new to sit. He believed in marrying a design to the environment. Being on the beach, a sandcastle being pretty much the root of the inspiration for the design, he felt this would fit, and it does. People walk down the driveway, walk into this house, and it takes about 15 minutes and they're changed. And it has to do with the magic that this house creates. It's like you're stepping into another world. Sandcastle is a bit of everything. It really is a perfect example of who my father was. To some people, it looks medieval, like a castle. To some people, it looks like a Dutch windmill. To some people, a Spanish lighthouse. I think that whoever lives here can't help but evolve with it. This is a very specific place with a magical quality about it. There's nothing ordinary, nothing boring. For the first time on the market, from my family to yours.
One of my favorite quotes from Frank Lloyd Wright is this: "Nature is the only body of God we see." What he's saying is that nature has this sacred quality. It's something that we need to take care of, that we need to treat with respect and dignity. And because we're a part of nature, we also need to treat each other with respect and dignity. This connection that Wright is trying to build into his buildings with nature, in fact, make our lives better. Toronto was commissioned by John Rayward in 1955. And it's among the last of the houses that Frank Lloyd Wright built since he died in 1959. While Toronto was being built, Wright was in New York City working on his largest commission, the Guggenheim Museum. During that time, Wright fled his suite in the Plaza Hotel and came up here to Connecticut because he enjoyed this house's connection with nature. This is one of my favorite Frank Lloyd Wright designs, but I've only ever seen it in photographs and in the drawings that Frank Lloyd Wright and his apprentices created. When I walked into the space, it really made my heart race a little bit because it's this beautiful intersection of this sweeping curve of the solar hemicycle and this rectilinear design. I don't think I've seen that in any other Frank Lloyd Wright property in the same way. And it's this beautiful expression of material in one of the most breathtaking settings of all of Frank Lloyd Wright's buildings. The setting rivals even perhaps Wright's most famous work, Falling Water, in the way that the house engages nature. The curve in this house is what Wright called a solar hemicycle. What that means is that the curve follows the movement of the sun through the day. So the curve out here faces east. That means it's gathering the morning light. And as the sun moves through the sky, the light in the room continuously spreads and expands, illuminating the space not only with that natural light, but with the warmth of the sun. It's even an early form of sustainable design because the sun is being used to heat the space, especially in winter. Wright loved materials, the integrity of materials, the intrinsic character of materials, and bringing that out was something that was a central part of his organic architecture. Even humble material like this concrete block Wright left it exposed not only to show what the house was built from, but also to show how the concrete itself was made. But he does something unusual with it. The horizontal joints between concrete block units are deeply raked. You see that horizontality expressed because that horizontality is the relationship with the earth itself. The vertical joints are raised a little bit so that they're flush with the concrete masonry unit. Those two things together underscore this horizontality and the relationship of building, people, and the land itself. He juxtaposes this material with this really warm, wonderful Philippine mahogany. And when you put these two things together, sort of the coolness of the block and the warmth of the wood, and once again, we get a bit of an emotional experience just by the juxtaposition of materials themselves. And if you imagine a walk through the woods, you don't just see one thing. You see different kinds of trees, shrubs, and bushes, and other plants. Nature does not like a monoculture. That actually doesn't really work very well. Wright is replicating that experience on interiors by creating these juxtapositions of material. We also see here in the corner, in a more rectilinear part of what's otherwise a curved design, we see this space that is a bit cave-like. Wright would call this a compression space with a lower ceiling, a little bit more darkness. The material that starts inside the house extends outside. There's this continuity of material broken only by this thin pane of glass that draws your eye outward, and inside and outside start to become a bit blurred. One of the things that Frank Lloyd Wright did was to design all of his buildings on a grid system. He would establish a grid to create a scale, similar to a musical staff, really, a scale for every part of the design. In this case, we can see that grid very clearly expressed on the floor, but that grid is also replicated in the panels in the ceiling, and even in the size of these upper clear-story windows on the curved surface of the building. By creating that framework, he once again creates this unified method or this unified system for ensuring that every aspect of the property would be structured according to the grid. The floor is a characteristic color for Frank Lloyd Wright's design. Beautiful subdued shade of red. Wright used many reds throughout his career, many different shades, but he loved it because it was a color not only found in nature, but it's a color that really defined us. Of course, it's the color of our blood, so it gives us life. This is the primary suite. Today, it's used as an office. It's a small space, and there's a reason for that. Wright wanted to connect people with other people, even within a family, and so he creates these designs to push you outwards. The concrete block of the wall lines up in an exterior planter, so that there's nature within the walls of the building, even though it's outside. And you also encounter the pool. You'd start your day with this connection with water. And that's important in this house because the name Tirana was selected by Wright to signify the relationship of this house to the Norriton River, right outside the window here. And that swimming pool really floats out over a pond that he's created by damming that river. And then you have the river itself. So there's always this connection with running water. Tirana being an Aboriginal word for running water. You have this beautiful mitered glass window. The post that you would normally expect to find in the corner is gone. And instead, it's a glass upon glass conjunction there, which allows you this uninterrupted view of nature. Wright can do this because of the structural techniques that he uses, where he doesn't need a post in the corner of the house to hold up the roof here. Instead, he's using cantilevers, a technique that he's really well known for to support the roof and other parts of the structure. One of the things that you see throughout this house is Frank Lloyd Wright's use of built-ins, whether it's shelving, cabinetry, even furniture. This is a very common element of Frank Lloyd Wright's properties. He loves the shelves for a couple of different reasons. First off, he can control where art's being placed, so it doesn't start disrupting the view of nature. But it also is something that Wright uses to create a sense of continuity. you'll notice how narrow this hallway is. There's a reason for that. We don't spend time in hallways, and Wright doesn't want you to spend time in this hallway. As you emerge from the bedrooms that line this space, he really wants you to move out, but head directly to that living space, that big open floor plan that's connected with that primary view that's setting above the river and into the forest. The other bedrooms of the house are also small, but they don't have the same visual connection to nature, though there's still a beautiful view of trees. They're small and dark. As we said, Wright's trying to move you out of this personal space where you're coming to sleep and into that primary open floor plan. We not only have more built-ins, but we have beautiful, simple chairs. I particularly love these chairs because I think they're a little bit up on their toes. It's a nice design. The scale is small. And when this house was built, we tended to sit a little bit more toward the earth than we do today. And by seating us a little bit lower, the low ceilings that we have in these rooms don't seem quite so low. The space opens up as we sit down. This is now one of the many bedrooms that exist in Tirana. Because that primary bedroom that Wright had designed for the Raywards was quite small, they came back to him a few years after the house was initially built and asked him to design a more expansive primary suite for them. A much larger bedroom, still having a connection with the natural world, but also a huge primary bathroom suite. And here in the bedroom, a circular dressing area and closet. There's even an observatory above this bedroom suite, so that at night, Mr. Rayward could go up and through a telescope gaze at the stars. The addition that was made to the house a few years after it was initially built by Wright himself created this wonderful interior courtyard, allowing you to look at what had been the primary facade of the house, but still also embracing its connection with nature, the trees, this beautiful wood underneath the pergola, and even the soffit detail that breaks up the board so that it's a bit more like the leaves found in nature off of a tree. That broken line is something that Wright uses always to try to connect us more with the natural landscape, since the solid line is not something that we necessarily find in nature. And instead of downspouts, Wright hated downspouts. He has these little stubs and chains hanging down so that as it rained, we would actually hear the water flowing, settling into the ground or even the small little pool right here. Wright wants to create this multi-sensory experience. It's not always visual in his architecture. Wright has us descend this beautiful floating staircase, and now we're back to the earth, back on the ground, while the building, because of Wright's cantilever techniques, seems to hover above the earth. That means we're really immersed in nature. We're totally connected to the land at this point, even though we know there's the structure above us. Because the house had such a beautiful setting, Wright designed it in a way that would take advantage of the natural landscape. He left the natural stones in situ just where the river had placed them hundreds, if not thousands of years ago, and he gives the house this great sense of repose. The gray of the concrete withdrawing, the warmth of the wood emerging, so that the building seems to have always belonged in this setting. He dams this gently flowing river to create a pond, and now we get to see the house in reflection as well. This is a technique that we often see in the Japanese gardens that inspired Wright, and indeed the Raywards hired an expert in Japanese garden design to create the landscape for them. He believed that a building should grace the landscape, that the building should feel as if it emerged naturally from the ground. And I really think it does that here. When I first encountered Wright's work as an 8-year-old boy, it was the space and the light that got me all excited because I'd never seen anything like it. Today, the space and the light still excites me because I now understand why that gives us the feeling that it does, why we feel different in a Frank Lloyd Wright house. And that's because he uses space and light to create this sense of intimacy with the world around us. It concerns me that there's so much bland architecture, it's just functional, when what we could do and what we should do is take that inspiration from Frank Lloyd Wright to give their clients a gracious way to live as part of the world around them, connected with everybody and everything that will make their lives better.
Sustainability in architecture is typically thought of as the energy consumption of a building after it's built. For us, sustainability instead is about the way that you actually build a building. When we first started using the shipping container about 30 years ago, there was a lot of stigma attached to it. And since then, the shipping container and prefabrication have gained much more respect.
We just respond creatively to what humanity pushes aside.
And that's why when we designed this house, we wanted to use 18 shipping containers to push this object to another level.
I always hope that that's the biggest legacy that we can leave. The idea that one can create something very exciting, like this house, out of something very humble, like these 18 old containers that we got out in a yard in New Jersey. It's a way to really understand that our creative potential is giant.
I'm Giuseppe Rignano.
Ada Tolla, we are the founders of Low-Tech, the architecture studio.
The building looks as if it was emerging from the underground. A quarter of the house is really cantilevering over the slope to the garage and to the main entrance, as you can see. So it creates a very dynamic corner. All the cuts that you see were all done off-site and then transported one container at a time here and assembled within 3 days.
In cutting the stack of containers diagonally, we reused all the pieces that we took out from one side onto the other side to complete the decks. This was a way to create this continuous form and, of course, also a way to use the container as much as possible.
For these facades, this is the side with the doors of the shipping container. So you can see all the features of the bars with the locks, and it's a much more articulated side of the container and creates a very vibrating type of facade. We were very excited and, of course, also nervous about how the assemblage was going to go in this very busy corner, as we can see. So it's really, really fantastic to see how this thing went up literally like a Lego toy in a matter of 3 days. We grew up in the same neighborhood.
Met on the bus in Naples when we were 14 in high school.
We didn't really become very close until the very end of architecture school.
We traveled together for a couple of months, which was kind of like a very immediate cold shower test because we had only seen each other socially and suddenly we were basically living together.
We kind of started noticing all the stuff that we don't want to see, the antenna, the duct, the air conditioning through your window, all things that we pretend they are not there, but they're there very much, and they are an inspiration to us. So we started taking a lot of pictures of these things. We called it the urban scan, and it's still an ongoing thing. It's been 30 plus years that we've been taking pictures of this stuff, and it's really the base of what Low-Tech is all about.
We're in the main space of the house now, which is one flight up from the entry level. Obviously, shipping containers are not meant to be lived in, so there's a real effort in understanding how to transform them.
This is the cut that we did in these containers to combine them and multiply the space. And this is the remaining part of the corrugated wall of the container, which of course acts as a structure. In the other direction, also the containers are joined wherever you see this, which is a sill that connects the two containers. So this floor is 3 containers wide by 2 containers long. So it's 6 containers, basically. The floors that you see here, these are the original floors of the container. The wood part is a species of hardwood plywood floor called apitong from Indonesia that is used for the production of shipping containers. The metal bits that you see of the floor basically corresponds to the point where a truck would connect. It's basically the hitch.
The outer walls are all insulated. The insulation is contained between the outer corrugation and the inside wall.
You can see actually the section of the wall, right? That whole entire 6-7 inches of thickness there, it's all the insulation that goes on the perimeter walls. The house was originally designed for a family of 4. So about 3 years ago, the house was sold to a new owner, single man, Jonathan, who obviously utilizes the house in a very different way.
When the house was sold, we understood why they were letting it go, but there was something that was slightly sad for us. I have to say that coming back here and seeing how Jonathan is occupying the house is very exciting.
The architecture of the house has not changed at all. A lot of the finishes and colors have changed. The kitchen is completely a stainless steel construction from a company that we've used for 20 years to build all our kitchens. They do kitchens for restaurants. And of course, for this house, it was even more fitting since the owners were restaurateurs themselves.
The idea of this big stainless kitchen made so much sense for us. Like, it's very utilitarian, it's very efficient.
It's also somewhat theatrical, right? Because it's the end of the entire open space of the house. It's really wonderful to see, you know, all the activity back here.
Because of this beautiful wood floor, from the beginning, we thought it would be nice to think about mirroring them and also enclosing the ceiling. The ceiling is also a way to insulate from one level to the next. Above all of this is insulation. And the finished material is luan, which is a fairly simple and basic wood, but a nice counterpart also in terms of color to the apitong on the ground.
The layout of the furniture is still the same. It's just that the furniture itself has changed. We always thought
upgraded.
Exactly. We always thought of a very long table here for big dinner parties and a linear lighting coming from the ceiling. And it's interesting to see how Jonathan has transformed it from a decorative and from a artistic point of view.
This is the living room proper?
The sitting room. Jonathan did an amazing job refurnishing. The fireplace is a very interesting story. Number one, because it's the last wood-burning fireplace to be permitted in New York City. It used to be this color, which is a silver. The other important thing to say about the fireplace that, of course, the owners, not only being restaurateurs, but owning one of the most famous barbecue places in New York, the joke was always that they wanted to be able to cook an entire pig. And that's why this is a very wide fireplace.
It wasn't a joke.
It wasn't a joke. Exactly.
It wasn't a joke, it was actual. The requirement was,
but I mean,
I want to be able to put a pig inside the fireplace.
Yes, and there we go.
Hence the size.
The furniture just feels like you want to take a nap right here.
I mean, you want to take a nap here, but it's even better to take it there.
It's better to take a nap over there, exactly.
On the slant.
So this is possibly the most interesting room in the house. Also, the shape of this room comes from having cut the containers on the underside, as we saw on the outside, to go down to the entrance of the house. So immediately when we saw this space in our computers, we said, okay, this is a home theater.
I love these pillows. I want to come here. I want to be invited to watch a movie because they're super comfortable. There are 3 panels that allow you to close the room completely on this side and then darkening shutters on the other side so that this is really working as a home theater.
So here we are in the primary bedroom. There is at the very top floor, so let's say 3.5 floors off the sidewalk. We basically decided to not just have the ceiling in wood, this is still the Luan, but also the entire back wall is also covered with the Luan. And as you can see, the king-size bed is inset into this wall in this niche. Also, the projector with the screen that covers the window at night so that you can watch TV and film.
The shower is very fun and kind of over the top because the idea that one could have this big shower looking out. We are again in Brooklyn, but at the same time is incredibly private because it's very much within the inner world of the house. I think that the open shower is very much connected also to this request from the original owner of these 2 separate bathrooms, right? They really wanted 2 separate spaces with their own things and their own privacy. So on the big wood wall, there are these doors with the long piano hinge that we love, that bring to the powder room, and then there's a back door that gives access to the walk-in closet at the very end.
And then this is the symmetrical, the second powder room here on the other side with the same layout and the same secret door to the walk-in closet. There is one continuous closet, although this is a section for the one person, and here is the shared part for shoes and everything. And it's interesting to notice that the top windows that we saw from the outside are actually the windows of this long walk-in closet. And here we are in the other powder room now, exiting again towards the bedroom. Now we are in the middle floor, so to speak, between the living room floor and the primary bedroom floor. This was meant to be a flexible space for the kids, and now Jonathan is using it mainly as a studio.
And from the studio, you can go this way to the guest room areas, right here. We're still on the second floor. These are the guest rooms. Each one is the width of one container. Originally, these were the 1-bedroom/2 bedroom for the twins because the original owners are twins. They were designed with the idea that they could have a single bedroom when they were smaller, and then eventually this could be divided to create really 2 separate spaces.
That's why there are also 2 doors here. The idea that this could be closed when they were ready to be a little bit more separate. We are now back on the ground floor, on the exterior, in the ground floor terrace, right off of the living room and the kitchen. And of course, the idea was, because every floor has a terrace, we wanted to connect all of them to be able to throw a party where you have people on every floor. There was also the fantasy of projecting movies on that wall, and therefore all the exterior spaces could become sort of a theater.
From here, you can take the stairs to go up. We should go.
This, again, is the terrace of the middle floor, so the extension of the indoor office. And then from this floor on, the trellis is actually occupied by the solar panels It was very important for us to take advantage of these long diagonal surfaces perfectly exposed to the sun. Here we are at the level of the primary bedroom.
And up here is the most fun.
This is the smallest space, but it's more of a viewpoint, because from up here you can really see all of Williamsburg, Greenpoint.
No, you can see downtown. I mean,
and you can see
the Freedom Tower. You can see downtown, the Wall Street area.
Yeah, this is a small space, but it's a perfect little perch to be here at sunset, maybe sit down and have a cocktail and relax at the end of the day. It's really a little jewel at the very top. This house is a very good example of a very comfortable and beautiful home created from this very common object. It's a continuous invention because we're always trying to push against it and push new boundaries and go to other places.
30 years of work is a lot of work. It's very exciting to look back and to think about everything that we have accomplished, especially because we really started from nothing. Every time we do something is a way to look at what else can we do with this object, right? It's a way to question how much more you can invent and explore, starting from this very, very simple box that we are obsessing with. And there is the desire to continue and try to do more and more and more, and things that we haven't done before, and explore other kind of projects.